Hey everybody, it's your boy Big L, Dr. L. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I appreciate it. Listen, I wanted to do a reaction, and I wanted to talk about the collective issues that African American folks have had. And there's a sister on here who I want to feature and highlight. And before I get to her, I want to play something by Noam Chomsky. If you're not familiar with Noam Chomsky, get familiar. The brother is in his 90s. He's the most prolific, astute speaker that I think I've ever heard, who has been very knowledgeable about the state of the world, state of America, the American economy, what's going on, and all this, that, and the other. So there's a show called Novora Media, and this brother put up Noam Chomsky, who was in his 90s now, 91 or 92 or something like that. I heard he was very sick. I thought he was going to lose him for a little bit, but I think he kind of pulled through. But we're going to listen to Noam Chomsky, and he's going to give a presentation about why the American empire is over. But I wanted to highlight what he says, because this is important, because, when we talk about the American system, and listen, this is not me bashing America. This is me being completely candid and frank about what's going on. So this brother is Matt Kennard, Noam Chomsky on the Collapse of the American Empire with Matt Kennard, Novara Media, shout out to him, 900K subscribers. And he's talking about, and so why he's talking about this is because you have to understand what propped up America, what it was, and all that. And then we're going to get into the main event for the night. So I wanted to do this as a reaction for us. So this is his name. I'm going to fast forward it here to Mr. Noam Chomsky, and he's going to go into what exactly happened to Haiti, why they're so broke and poor. And it's not because they're just, crazy. So here we go. I'm going to play a little bit faster here.
The Financial Times sent me to Haiti the year after the earthquake to cover the so-called reconstruction there. The US had near complete control over the country. Can you describe briefly the US role in Haiti over recent history?
Well, we can start. I mean, the whole history is so disgraceful and shameful. It's painful to talk about it. Since 1804, when Haiti made the mistake of becoming the first free country of free men in the hemisphere and overthrowing slavery, the so-called civilized world had tantrums about it, tried hard to destroy it. The U.S. refused even to recognize Haiti till 1862, recognized Haiti and Liberia as places where you could send freed slaves. Then comes an awful history, which I won't recount. By the 1980s, 90s, the U.S. was still strongly supporting the dictatorships, vicious, brutal dictatorships. There was an first free election in the country in 1989. Everyone assumed that it would be won by the US-backed candidate, a World Bank official from the elite. Nobody was paying attention to the organizing that was going on in the slums and the hills, which was pretty remarkable. And they managed to win with an overwhelming majority. They managed to elect Jean-Paul Aristide, a populist priest with quite a strong record of courageous opposition to the dictatorship. Well, the States was, of course, infuriated, not going to tolerate this. He had 7 months in office and was achieving quite remarkable results. He was even impressed. Even the international financial institutions, World Bank, IMF, were quite impressed with the overthrowing of corruption, the positive actions, and so on. Well, he was overthrown in a coup, tacitly backed by the United States, not so secretly. After 7 months, they instituted a reign of extreme torture and oppression. I actually visited in those years. I've been in a lot of pretty awful places around the world, but I've never seen such fear and misery as shortly after the Sidras coup takeover. People were they wouldn't even talk to you. The most they'd say is there are voices everywhere. There are eyes everywhere. I can't say anything. And the poverty was indescribable. Well, that lasted through the Clinton years. Finally, there was a very interesting, the Clinton administration finally agreed to allow Aristide to return, sent the Marines, restored him, but on condition.
This is President Clinton. So people say was the first black president, right? Continue listening to this interview.
That he accept very harsh economic programs, which doomed the country to further disaster. He had to let in with no restrictions. U.S. agribusiness produced rice and from Clinton's home state, mostly incidentally. Haitian farmers are quite efficient, but they can't compete with highly subsidized U.S. agribusiness. So that was going to virtually wipe out the basis for peasant society. But it was worse than that. I happened at that time to be following the AP direct news through some system that had been worked out briefly. You watch AP News, it's quite interesting. You're getting direct moment by moment reporting without any filtering, just what the reporters see. But every day on the AP News, there's one story selected, featured. Says there's a break. They say for editors, this is the top story for the day. Well, the day that the Marines were going to land with a lot of hoopla about how wonderful it is we're liberating Haiti, the top story that day was that the Treasury Department had been permitting Texaco Oil Company to send oil to the junta. Now, that's very important. There were almost no restrictions on the military junta. The rich could go to Miami and shop, buy whatever they wanted, no problems. There was one thing they couldn't get, oil. And the CIA was testifying to Congress that all oil shipments had been cut. Just walking around Port-au-Prince, you could see that that's not true. In fact, you could see the Mevs family, the rich family, building oil facilities. So obviously oil was coming in. Well, it turned out that secretly the Clinton administration was providing oil to the junta, the one thing they couldn't get. I was writing an article about it, but I barely even mentioned this. I know my article wouldn't come out for 6 weeks. I thought by then it would be a big story. Well, nothing. It simply wasn't reported. Had to be the story is U.S. liberating Haiti, not U.S. destroyed Haiti by supporting the military junta. I was able to leak this material to my friend Alex Coburn, who was writing, I think, for The Nation at that time, and he did do a story about it, but that's the only thing that appeared. This is particularly interesting to me because of a childhood experience. In the around late 30s, early 40s, I was pretty closely following the Spanish Civil War. The official position of the United States and other liberal democracies was neutrality. Wouldn't participate. That's a gift to the Axis and to Franco, of course, because Germany and Italy were arming them. And for the liberal democracies to say neutrality is to say, okay, we'll let them be destroyed. There was one thing that Germany and Italy couldn't supply, oil. In the left-wing press that I was reading at the time, they reported that the Treasury Department had allowed the Texaco Oil Company to break its contracts with the Republic and to ship oil to Franco. The government, of course, denied this. Later, it turned out that they conceded that quietly that it was true. Same oil company. Then history replayed in an unbelievably ugly way. Well, then come the following years. I won't go through the details. It was impossible for Haiti to reconstruct under the harsh conditions that Clinton imposed. Clinton, in fact, later apologized for them. Finally, there was another election. Aristide was elected again. The U.S., Canada, and France basically invaded Haiti, kidnapped him, sent him off to the Central African Republic, shut him up, restored the government to brutal thugs. His party, Lavalas Man Party, wasn't even allowed to participate. Well, that's the way it continues until now. By now, the country is such a hideous wreck. It's hard to know if it can even be reconstructed. Maybe its best bet would be to have China invest in it. And that's not a joke, incidentally. It's a history of centuries of vicious, murderous torture and violence, mainly not for secret reasons. Black men overthrew slavery, became a free country of black men, not women.
What? What? Let's rewind that here. Not an unknown secret, open secret. Why did they oppress the Haitian people for years? Haiti was once one of the richest colonies on the planet, if not the richest, as far as their agriculture and business. Once they overthrew slavery, now it's the poorest? How does that happen?
Murderous torture and violence, mainly not for secret reasons. Black men overthrew slavery, became a free country of black men, not women. That was just intolerable, especially to the slave society next door. France isn't even worse. France, which Haiti had been a French colony, the richest colony in the French Empire. A large part of France's wealth derives from Haiti. They imposed a severe indemnity on Haiti to punish them for daring to overthrow slavery. Haiti had no choice, had to pay under these conditions of imperial attack. It wasn't until, I think the 1940s that Haiti actually managed to pay off France. Aristide, when he was president, politely requested the French to consider remunerating Haiti for this immense burden that had strangled the country after horrible French colonialism and slavery. France did establish a commission to look into it, headed by Regis Debray, leftist Regis Debray. They decided that France had no obligations. I mean, all of this, it gets so unspeakable, you can't even say
talk about reparations and all that, right? Talk about reparations. I'm not one to talk about reparations, particularly for slavery, for the work that was done. But I think that post-colonial, post-slavery, the psychological damage that was done, and when you consider the economic sanctions, you know, France had threatened to invade Haiti again unless they paid for the formerly enslaved. That was the threat. That's why they had to pay them. And they finally paid it off in 1940. That's millions of dollars that could have gone into education, millions of dollars that could have gone into infrastructure, millions of dollars that could have gone into the military. Not to mention the stranglehold that taxes paid on them and all that. Right? There's numerous books about all this, but
Can't even talk about it. Everywhere you look, it's beyond description.
all right, so that's what I want to play from him. So that's that. So now let me go over to the main event that I wanted to talk about tonight, and this is I'm going to butcher her name. Arikana Chihombori-Quao. I can't. I sincerely apologize. But I'm going to put her up on the screen here, and we'll get to it. So she's going to talk. They're going to talk about USAID.
Studying with this crowd.
They're going to talk about USAID and all that kind of stuff. So,
hi, I'm Steve Clements, and I have a question. With the termination of tens of billions of dollars of U.S. aid and humanitarian assistance to Africa and elsewhere around the world, is this going to create waves of tragedy? Let's get to the bottom line. As part of its mission to downsize the U.S. federal government, the Trump administration has suspended employment of thousands of USAID workers and has terminated its programs and most global humanitarian assistance. There have been some exceptions for life-saving programs, but these are small waivers amidst an onslaught of huge, massive aid cuts. Africa stands out as the most impacted. But what may disappear? Humanitarian assistance, infrastructure support, medicine and food programs. These are all substantial for countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, which receives about $1.34 billion each year. Ethiopia, which gets about $1.2 billion. Sudan, nearly $800 million. And other major grants going to Nigeria, to South Sudan, Kenya, Mozambique, Uganda, and more. But some see a silver lining in this gutting of U.S. support for the continent. With aid, they say, there has been substantial political meddling and resource exploitation that has demeaned and sidelined African empowerment and economic growth. So rather than trauma with the USAID cuts, there could be opportunity, they say. Today, we're talking with Ambassador Arikana Chihombori-Quao, a medical doctor and former permanent representative of the African Union to the United States. Ambassador, it is terrific to have you with me in stage here in studio. Let me just ask you, if I look through the USAID, Ambassador, it is terrific to have you, Arikana Chihombori. Rather than trauma with the USAID cuts, there could be opportunity, they say. Today, we're talking with Ambassador Arikana Chihombori-Quao, a medical doctor and former permanent representative of the African Union to the United States. Ambassador, it is terrific to have you with me in stage here in studio. Let me just ask you, if I look through the USAID programs, some of which have been cut off. In Congo, there's an aid group, Action Against Hunger. This is they're treating tens of thousands of malnourished children. In Ethiopia, food assistance stopped for more than 1 million people, as we've seen these AID cuts go into force, really across the board with very, very few waivers. How is Africa feeling this moment? Do you see this as a story of tragedy, or is there something else that we need to be looking at?
Do you need pants that never get wet? The bearskin cargo.
Something else we need to be looking at. There is need for readjustments. There is need for realignment. We need to understand the real reason why USAID is in Africa. And not just USAID, but other NGOs. You look at DFID, which is the British equivalent, and many other smaller ones. Their sole purpose was to act as if they're coming to rescue Africa. They're coming to fill in the gaps in government services, gaps in education, gaps in healthcare, gaps in humanitarian services. They're coming in the guise of addressing issues to do with human rights, issues to do with environmental protection and social justice. They are coming in claiming that they're introducing grassroots initiatives that are going to help the people. And so they use that as a way to go into the most remote parts of Africa. They're talking about government advocacy. When you look at it on paper, it all looks really good, but they're actually wolf in sheep's clothing. They are using that open access sounding humanitarian to constantly destabilize governments. I can tell you right now, the majority of African leaders, and not just African leaders, but leaders in the developing world, are celebrating the exit of USAID. I was listening to a program, I believe it was CNN, and I was jumping up and down. It was a government official from Hungary. He was echoing the same sentiment. He said they are happy USAID is leaving Hungary because they are always supporting opposition. Their form of government advocacy is support.
She said Hungary? The nation of Hungary?
It was a government official from Hungary. He was echoing the same sentiment. He said they are happy USAID is leaving Hungary because they are always supporting opposition. Their form of government advocacy is supporting whoever can keep the government in a turmoil.
So, Ambassador, let me just jump in here. This is a message that I don't think many Americans hear. I think many Americans believe, not all of them, but many of them believe that AID was essentially set up for philanthropic reasons, for dealing with the HIV/AIDS crisis, dealing with the various instabilities in the region, dealing with infrastructure deficits. But you're saying that there was something else as part of that package, meddling.
A major meddling agenda, major meddling agenda. The majority of some of the workers, now the average USAID worker may not realize it, but quite a few of them are also operatives who are underground, and their major agenda is to destabilize governments, destabilize countries. If you think about it, their sole purpose, for example, filling in the gaps in healthcare and education. Where is the change? Show me one country that USAID was in and education improved. Show me what country where USAID was in and healthcare improved. The social services they're bringing, it's peanuts. The American taxpayer needs to know the billions of dollars that are being given to USAID, a fraction is making it to the people.
One of the highest profile medicine programs is PEPFAR, which both Republicans and Democrats here in Washington are really having outcries about. It was one of the signature programs of President George W. Bush to try to respond to the HIV/AIDS epidemic in Africa. What's the view on that front? Let's
look at what HIV/AIDS was used to do. We know of a program that was run out of South Africa where they actually were injecting people with the virus. The reason some of the AIDS virus spread as rapidly as it did in Southern Africa, there were some very dirty games being played on African people.
Does that sound like what they did with the brothers and with syphilis, injecting people intentionally?
We're using Africans as guinea pigs for experimental activities. Even when you look at every aspect, they're using us as guinea pigs. Yes, there is some good, a percentage of some good, but not all of it is done with good intentions. You look at agriculture, they're destroying African agriculture by introducing those GMOs. You plant your seed in one season, your soil is finished. We used to have seeds that we can use from one season to the other. The introduction of GMOs through these agencies, USAID is one of them. We're destroying Africa in a massive way. A little good is coming out, but by and large, the end result, they mean no good. They can turn around and give us an inventory and say, as long as you have been in Africa and also other parts of the world, show us your success rate. You claim you're helping governments with education and healthcare. Show us your success rate. But I also turn around and say, African governments, why do you need this little aid to assist you in providing proper healthcare, proper education? The average African government can afford to provide those services for their people.
I happen to have many friends that work for USAID, both in the field, but also in Washington. And I have to tell you, I know that they believe that they're doing good, that they're trying to move the needle for those that are in desperate situation and desperate conditions. I think it's very interesting to raise the question of what the other political purposes are. But as you sort of look at the scene now, the French are very big in aid programs. As you mentioned, the British, there are also Chinese aid programs. Are all of these programs essentially power plays and all of them need to be suspended? How do you see some of the other international programs in Africa now?
Well, these are all underground covert operations. Why does Africa need them? Why do we need them? Africa has been the provider. If you look at Europe, Europe cannot survive without Africa. One situation that people don't realize, post-World War, when the US came up with the Marshall Plan, what they don't tell you is that the contribution through exploitation of African minerals was actually the biggest funder of the European Recovery Plan, ERP, aka the Marshall Plan. US contributed $13 billion, which is now present day $175 billion, which, by the way, the American taxpayer must be paid back. Nobody's asking for that money back. But what they don't tell you is that Africa, through exploitation of its resources by the Europeans, was actually a much, much bigger contribution to the European recovery post-World War II. Nobody talks about that. Why does such a continent that did so much to help Europe recover continue to be so poor? Let's be realistic here. Let's not talk about peanuts. Africa does not need the aid. What we need is for those who are exploiting Africa to stop. Africa has everything it needs. If Africa could have contributed as much as it did to the recovery of Europe post-World War II, why wasn't Africa equally developed?
So what happens next, Arikana? You and I have talked about this before, in the exploitation of minerals, of uranium, of cobalt, of nickel.
I got to stop it, and getting strikes and all that, but this is what Noam Chomsky said. It's crazy.
Et cetera, and many other rare earths, which is apparently very much on President Trump's mind, because we see the negotiation for rare earths with Ukraine. But you and I have talked about the artificially low prices and the fact that many economies in Africa don't participate in the gains and growth of the exploitation of those resources. What happens now when these aid programs are withdrawing? Does the social contract between American mining operations or other global mining operations, does it give an opportunity for the power dynamic to shift and change? And what will that look like?
I think this is a wake-up call for the African leaders. To the same extent that President Trump is saying USA first, African leaders must also say Africa first. This is a wake-up call to the African leaders to take inventory of what is really happening in their countries. Do they really need the peanuts that are coming in as aid? What is really going out? If I may use the example of what happened in Niger when the government decided they were going to take over the mining of their uranium. The French companies that were mining the uranium were paying the government 80 cents a kilo for the uranium, and then turning around and selling the uranium to the rest of the world at 200 euros a kilo. So that one move from the Nigerian government to say we are now going to take ownership of our own uranium, they went from realizing about $1 billion in uranium resources to over 300 billion a year. Do you realize what I'm talking about? No amount of NGO could bring that kind of money. And this is only one mineral. Now imagine the country taking inventory of all their minerals and benefiting from their natural resources like the rest of the countries in the Western world. That is what African leaders need to look at.
Do you see that in the horizon of African leaders right now?
They're
Do you
gonna have
see them? Who do you see as the standout winners of that kind of change? And who do you think is still chasing AID contracts?
Let me tell you, we need to look at what's happening in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. President Traore is standing up. He is saying the natural resources in Burkina Faso, they belong to the people of Burkina Faso. Niger is doing the same thing. Mali is doing the same thing. Every leader must look at what's happening in the Sahel nations to say, like anybody else, you must take care of your people. You have your natural resources. You have everything you need to take care of your people. Why do you continue to be beggars? Look at what is being brought in by not only USAID, but all the NGOs in your country. It's peanuts. It's a joke that African leaders should continue to be beggars of peanuts when you are looking and allowing billions to get out of your country year in and year out, if not trillions, in natural resources that your people should be benefiting from. It is a wake-up call for African leaders to wake up and say, President Trump is saying, US first, America first. You too must say, your country first, because you have everything it takes. It is a joke. It is embarrassing to see I'm not saying any African leader cry over USAID living. I can tell you for a fact, the average African leader privately is celebrating the exit of USAID because they know what is really going on.
Let me ask you a
So I'm going to leave it up there, right? I don't want to steal all of the interview, right? It's another 11 minutes or so, but I just want to kind of give a little hint there, and just so you guys can go over there, check out the full interview there. But just the exploitation of African people, man. The exploitation of African people. The exploitation of African people. The land, their labor. So go over to I actually just kind of Googled this. So she actually has a YouTube channel, Ambassador Arikana Chihombori-Quao. I'm so sorry for butchering her name here. So she has a number of videos. This video right here, The Legacy of Colonization. How long is this video? I don't see how long it is. 33 minutes. I would play a little bit of it. Watch this video. That was the first time I ever saw her. That's this video of hers 4 years ago. The Legacy of Colonization by Dr. Arikana. I'm just going to call her that. I don't want to butcher her name anymore. That video to me is what really kind of turned me on to her. And you can see, I don't think she gets enough views. I can't believe this. Maybe she just started a channel, or it's just the views. I don't know. She's only got a few videos, 25 videos. She's Can't Breathe, Justice for George Floyd hashtags. Obviously very African thinking collectively. So go over there, check out her channel, and watch that particular video of The Legacy of Colonization. Fantastic video. That's it. That's all I got. Much love and peace. Hit me in the comment section. Take care.